We recognize that the Champlain Valley Unitarian Universalist Society gathers on the land of the Western Abenaki people. We respect the Abenaki's spiritual relationship to this land and seek to honor the living traditions of the Abenaki. We humbly hope to learn from them how we can better live in harmony, peace, and justice.
Good morning. This morning, the prelude is from our hymnal. It's hymn 134, Our World is One World. Now, as you know, sometimes I pick the music for our services based on the sound of the music. Does it fit a certain mood? But sometimes, in the case of hymns, the words that have been written for the music affect me. And that's true this week. I think it's been a tough week. Doesn't matter what side you're on, where you are, who you are. It's been a tough week. One of the verses says, our world is one world. The thoughts we think affect us all. The way we build our attitudes. With love or hate, we make a bridge or a wall. Another verse says, our world is one world, just like a ship that bears us all, where fear and greed make many holes, but where our hearts can hear a different call. So with my heart to your heart, I make a prelude.
Good morning, and welcome to the Champlain Valley Unitarian Universalist Society streaming service. As members and friends of the Champlain Valley Unitarian Universalist Society, committed to the Unitarian Universalist principles, we strive to be an inclusive, welcoming community that sustains a liberal religious tradition. We aspire to be visible and active on behalf of social justice and environmental responsibility. We nurture and empower each other at all ages on our spiritual journeys, and we reach out to the larger communities of which we are a part. My name is Jason Duquette Hoffman, and I am the worship associate for today's service, which is led by our minister, Reverend Barnaby Feeder. If you're visiting today, please send us a message to introduce yourself, and be sure to join us after the service during our virtual coffee hour for good conversation and company via this Zoom meeting. After the service, all who wish to join our virtual coffee hour should stay on the Zoom meeting, and Neil, Julie, and Jordan will move us into breakout groups. If you haven't already done so, this is the perfect time to turn off your cell phones or any other device you aren't using to stream this service, or to put them into worship mode. If you have milestones and passages that you would have us share with the congregation during that portion of the service. Please enter them in the chat, and I'll review these as we go along. Our service today is the product of the efforts of many people, in addition to all of the support that our worship team and our staff provide. Richard Hopkins was our gatherer, organizing all these elements, herding all the contributors, and producing our show. Margie is our videocaster today. The Time for All Ages was created by Poppy Reese. Our music today was provided by Kate Gridley, and Lucy Tenenbaum curated the images you'll see throughout our service. Our call to worship today leads us to find in each other the realizations of our fullest potential through the words of two luminaries in conversation with us from Marquise Bay's book on radical Black feminism, Them Goon Rules. May we engage their words with our whole selves. First, we're called to our togetherness today by Toni Morrison, who teaches us, these people are my access to me. They are my entrance to my own interior life, which is why the images that float around them, the remains, so to speak, surface first. And they surface so vividly and so compellingly that I acknowledge them as my route to a reconstruction of a world, to an exploration of an interior life that was not written, and to the revelation of a kind of truth. Secondly, Marquise Bay both reminds us and empowers us with these words. If I am here, wherever here is, it is because I was sent here by folks who have been putting in the work for a minute. I am here with them, even if they are not where I am. We collide in a critical intimacy where what I say is only possible because it has been made so by things that they have already said. A method of living of sorts. This intimacy is rugged. This intimacy fissures boundaries imposed, a method that methodologically interrogates methodology, a breaking of the regime that tried to fix us, but didn't know that we arose in the breaking. We were made by a breakage that generates the refusal to be broken. Every day of every week, we are sustaining our critical intimacy through our connections and our commitments to each other here. Beyond our weekly services, there are many pathways to connection. The third new UU class, tomorrow evening from 5 to 6 p.m., focuses on UU history. It's open to all members, new and continuing, and it's a great opportunity to refresh ourselves on our centuries-old history of heresy. The Council of Ministries Zoom meeting today at 3:30 is another pathway to connection. You don't have to be a representative of one of our ministries to attend. And if you have questions, contact Jean Terwilliger or Lise Anderson. If you're not receiving our monthly newsletter or our weekly Wednesday emails with these pathways to connections in them, please email office@cvuus.org. As is our custom, I'll light a chalice to begin our worship service today. The words to our chalice lighting, adapted from Langston Hughes, will appear on your screen if you want to say them along with me. We have tomorrow bright before us like a flame. Yesterday, a night gone thing, a sundown name, and today, and dawn today, broad arch above the road we came. We march. And now Poppy will share Time for All Ages.
Let us open our eyes to see what is beautiful. Let us open our minds to seek what is true. Let us open our hearts to love one another. And may we walk in peace. Let us open our eyes to see what is is beautiful. Let us open our minds to seek what is true. Let us open our hearts to love one another. And may we walk in peace.
Hey everyone, good morning. We celebrate the first woman vice president. We celebrate the first vice president who is also a person of color. Her parents were immigrants from Jamaica and India. So many exciting firsts. And I really want to make sure the kids who are seeing this video are really hearing the possibility here of what can happen. Democracy, people having a vote, people having a say. Kamala Harris getting to where she was as vice president doesn't just happen. Even if it's a right to vote, it doesn't mean we all actually get to vote. So fighting democracy and voting is action and work, a lot of hard work, and a lot of people, including many kids, have been writing postcards to voters. Many adults voted themselves. People have been giving money, doing a lot of hard work. So now let us briefly rest a little bit and celebrate before we pick up the rest of the work that we all have to do. So I want to sing, and I want to sing with you. And even though I won't be able to hear you because you're muted, I can see you, and I hope that people will sing along with what they can pick up. I'm going to put the words in the chat, I hope. Oh, yes. So this is a song called This Is What Democracy Looks Like by Elizabeth Alexander from a songbook called the Justice Choir Songbook. Very cool. I highly recommend it for everybody, especially people who go to protests and assemblies and are always wanting music. She based it on a protest chant. This is what democracy looks like. Show me what democracy looks like. And we're going to go through it twice. All right. So you'll pick it up, and I hope you will sing loud and boisterously. This is what democracy looks like. Show me what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. Show me what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. Hey, hey, look this way. 1, we see that there's a wrong to be righted. 2, we know that we are stronger when united. 3, we exercise our right to assemble. 4, that's when the proud and mighty start to tremble. Just in case you're wondering, just in case you're wondering, just in case you're wondering. Hey, hey, look this way. This is what democracy looks like. Tell me what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. What democracy looks. This is what democracy looks like. Tell me what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. Hey, hey, look this way. 1, we see that there's a wrong to be righted. 2, we know that we are stronger when united. 3, we exercise our right to assemble. 4, that's when the proud and mighty start to tremble. Just in case you're wondering, just in case you're wondering, just in case you're wondering. Hey, hey, look this way. 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 So, my friends, here's the message I send you out with. To the adults, I hope you will take a brief break with this beautiful, beautiful day to appreciate the work you have done before you pick up the work to heal the world. We know that there's a lot of work still to be done, but we need to rest to keep doing it. And my kids, what I would hope for you this week and today is that you will do something nice and helpful for your adults who have just done a lot of work. Bring them some lemonade, make them lunch, sing them a song, do something for them. I miss you. I love you all.
Thank you, Poppy. Our offering this month is shared with the Alyssum Respite Center, which we introduced in last week's service, which you can watch online if you missed it. Alyssum is a peer-hosted, holistic alternative program where people can come to work on mental health struggles. In any time, this needs goes so largely unmet. And in this time, we know that the work of Alyssum is so very critical and affirms our shared humanity in so many important ways. We invite you to give as generously as you are able.
So, milestones and passages, the time in our service when we share moments in our lives with the congregation that are important to us, either moments of joy or moments of sadness. Poppy has just referred to a moment that has dominated the lives of so many of us, the election, for longer than we would like to even recall. And I think it's going to be one of those events where everybody can tell you where they were when they finally heard the results announced for years to come. And a time when families exchange messages and photos and images. And we will all look back on this, no matter what side we were on in the campaign, thinking about this as a pivotal moment in our history together as a community. I have one other milestone that I received this week, and it actually came from Middlebury Police Chief Tom Hanley. Tom Hanley got in touch with me and sent a letter confirming that the guns we collected and subsidized the collection of as part of our donations ministry in the summer of 2013 have finally been destroyed. The police chief was very cooperative about collecting the guns and saying he would get them destroyed, but then he found out it was a lot harder to get that done legally than he had anticipated. And in all these years, he'd been looking for some federal government approved way of destroying the guns. And they finally found an outfit in Maine after a number of false starts here in Vermont. And Tom sent me the whole description of how they were destroyed, along with quite a few other guns that had piled up at the police station since our initiative in 2013. So this is as good a time as any to remind those of you who weren't here that the congregation chose that time to donate to subsidizing people turning in guns and giving a $50 payment to anybody who would turn in a gun. And we collected something in the low double digits from the community. And it was a unique thing to do with our donations ministry, something that made me very proud of CVUUS. Now, I haven't received any other milestones notices this week. I guess people were a little preoccupied. So I'm going to invite you into what is normally a time of silence and prayer, where we think about what's really in our hearts. But since the second part of our service is going to be a time when you can ask me anything you want, hopefully with some sort of a spiritual angle, because I know nothing about home repairs. I hope you will use this time of silence and beautiful music that Kate's going to provide to think about what question you might want to ask and to put it in the chat so that Jason can feed them to me. Thank you.
What wondrous love is this, oh my soul, oh my soul. What wondrous love is this, oh my soul. What wondrous love is this that brings my heart such bliss and takes away the pain of my soul, and takes away the pain of my soul.
Well, we have yet to generate any questions necessarily, but
And this is very true to what happens when we meet in person in the sanctuary. There's always silence beyond the moment of silence while people gather their thoughts about what their question is going to be. If I don't get something in the next few seconds, I'm going to answer the question, what wondrous love is this?
So Poppy writes, Reverend Barnaby, what do you love the most about being a minister?
Then depends a little bit, Poppy, on which day you ask me. But I think the thing that I love the most about being a minister is the knowledge that there's a whole group of people who've decided that they want to be together with each other in trying to make the world a better place and to trying to make their own lives more meaningful. And they're serious enough about that commitment. They've actually called someone who's gone through training as well as their own life journey to help them organize that effort to do that. And it's such an amazing, positive way for people to be with each other and to know that there's a group of people who are out there saying, we want you to come lead us in this. We're confident it's going to make our lives better and the world better, is an incredibly wonderful call to receive. And it makes my life full thinking about all the different ways that can happen. And each year it evolves a little bit how I think about it this year because of our connection to the three sisters motif that we got from the Abenaki, and the way it's taken me into thinking about love as consisting of justice, compassion, and beauty in its different forms. I look at it that as what the congregation, all those three different areas are way we can grow. And the congregation is inviting me to think and act about all of those different things to help ignite that conversation. And then there is the added knowledge that in times of real sorrow and sadness, which everybody runs into, the congregation has asked me to be a kind of a first on the scene witness sometimes, or a person to give an overview about how we get through that together and to represent each other. So I feel like I'm the extension of the better angels of 180 adults and 67 kids. When I do it right. Sometimes I'm just the extension of the mistakes that humans make when the better angels aren't taking over. Yes, Jason.
Thank you. So Margie writes, in this time of division, which I think is based on fear, what can we do to reduce fear?
Well, I think in my experience, the first thing you can do is try and create situations where you can listen and identify the piece of that person's fear that you can affirm in some way. Say, I understand that part of it. Can you tell me more? Because I think that people's fears revolve around safety. They revolve around a sense that they belong to something that's enduring. And they often are selfless in the sense that they're more afraid for their families and their loved ones than they are for themselves. And so I think when we start by listening, we start by locating where the bridges are between each other. And when you get into a situation where someone starts to see that someone who's very different from them, someone who even disagrees with them on some basic things, also is like them in ways they can relate to, then you can begin to deal with that fear. Also, I think we have to learn to live with it being there, that any mission that says we can get rid of someone's fear is kind of a chase after fool's gold. Fear is very much a part of our lives. It's one of our evolved mechanisms for protecting ourselves. So it's always going to be there, and we shouldn't beat ourselves up for engagements that don't eliminate it.
Thanks. And Jordan asked sort of a corollary question to that is, as people who aspire to create connection and understanding among the diverse lives in our community, how do we live those values while not being thwarted by those whose approach is much more confrontational? And Jordan writes that they're thinking, about how to link an improvement in the national conversation to those dialogues that we have here locally and in and among our community.
Yeah, so I don't know how many people here remember the movie The Mouse That Roared, or the book that it was based on. But it's about a little country somewhere in the middle of Europe that decides the only way to save its economy is to declare war on the United States and lose, because this was the post-World War II era, and the United States seemed to take care of people that it conquered. And so this was their strategy. And they were called the Duchy of Grand Fenwick, and they had two mottos. One was that yea can be turned into nay and vice versa with enough words. And the second motto was, the pen is mightier than the sword, but at any given moment, the sword will dominate. And I think that this second motto goes to that question. If there are people out there willing to use violence against you, there will be situations in which you or your allies, if you're unable to get out of harm's way, will be crushed. But the teaching of nonviolence, which I believe in fundamentally, is that if your cause is just and enough people stick with it and show courage, eventually the people who are acting out of force get exhausted and begin to feel morally they're on ground that's unsteady, and you gradually win the battle. I don't think that there are ways without great sacrifice of many different sorts that any important battle is won, and maybe won is the wrong word, is shifted to terms that look healthier. I'm not one who believes that the course of human events is always upward. There are ways that a lot of progress can be taken away for a very, very long time. And that impact is very real on the people who lose that progress. But in the greater scheme of things, I think we are evolving towards more organization around the concept of love. Some of you know my theology is that there is a force loose in the universe, which I call love with a capital L, or spirit of life-giving love, and that it has emerged from us collectively and is out there calling us to do the right thing. And I think we're far enough along that we won't lose connection to that call. That doesn't mean we're always capable of responding to it. And but I think that lies at the roots of Parker's observation that the moral arc of the universe is towards justice, and similar religious teachings that in the end love conquers death. So I don't think that there is an easy answer to this question of how you deal with people who are willing to be more confrontational, except to be more loving and maybe smarter and wiser in how you do that. Sometimes humor will work, sometimes it won't. One thing we have learned over and over is just presenting better evidence in front of people who are confrontational does not work, and in fact gets twisted around to confirm their biases instead of changing their position. So how do we protect our own reliance on evidence and science while realizing its limits in terms of converting others is a really fundamental question for us. I might add, because I'm teaching the new U classes, and this last class on Thursday, we were dealing with the variety of beliefs that you would find going to a UU church in the country. And I noted that for a long time, when people asked, what do UUs believe? The question was really, what do you believe about God? Does God exist? Is there one God or many? Are you an atheist or an agnostic and everything like that? For much of our history in the 19th century and the 18th century, that was the fundamental religious question. But if you're doing a systematic theology, there are a bunch of other basic questions, like what do you believe about the nature of humanity? What do you believe about creation? How did it happen? Did it happen? What do you believe about end times? So when you look at all of these things, there's one field that's also very important to every religion, which is what is the truth and how do we know it? And what I noted in talking to this group is that what is this truth and how do we know it is actually surpassed the question of theology, of the nature of God in most people's fundamental religious concerns, because it's so much a part of our political life right now.
Well, we have a couple more questions percolating, but I think we have a moment here for some musical interlude while folks continue to get their creative juices flowing about the questions that they want to ask in this moment at this time. So we'll switch to that musical interlude and we'll be back with more of your questions. Thank you, Kate, for that hymn. And we'll have another one of those at the conclusion of our question and answer time. Carl writes, Barnaby, when the pandemic is mercifully in the past, what will church, our beloved community, look like? How will it be different? As Yogi Berra is thought to have said, the future ain't what it used to be.
Yeah, Carl, of course, we also know Yogi said, I didn't say half the things I said. So I'm not sure if this is in the category of a real Yogi Berra quote or just an attributed one. But I think it's too soon to tell. I think it's a story we're writing. A miniature part of that, for instance, is what are we going to do with this December? This is our first big time of not being able to do something that's sort of been fundamental in the church life of the year. Everybody getting together, or most everybody getting together on Christmas Eve and lighting candles and singing together, and we can't do it. So the story we write about how we do something that's very important in the church here, whether it's that or how do we deal with our children and our RE program when so many families find it too unworkable for them to be with us on Sunday morning. These are all things that will tell us what the church can be like in the future, because one thing we're discovering is how to do a bunch of new things we like and don't want to leave behind in whatever comes out on the other side. One of the things we've been very clear about is that we're not going to stop streaming live services so that people who aren't with us can join us. And that's led to some amazing, wonderful happenstances already. Our connection with Katie Diaz out in Oregon. She's attended several services after my having just tried to incorporate her in a story for one of the services. That wouldn't have happened in the past. We're going to be able to have Amy Zucker Morgenstern, who was an intern here long before I was here, leading a service from Palo Alto, California in January. And so we'll be able to broaden who we are in ways that were inconceivable. And I hope we don't turn our back on all of those opportunities. At the same time, I think we're going to probably want to go back and try to be as close as we can be to what we used to do before a couple of times to see how that feels for us now. Maybe that's no longer us. We won't know until we go back and try it. So I think at the other end of COVID, when we do have a vaccine that makes enough of a difference that people feel confident all being together, there's going to be this wonderful creative challenge of bringing the past and the future together. So I'm really looking forward to that. I'm not worried what will be on the other side unless too many of us just give up the effort to figure out what we can be now until we can be together. I think we need to prove to ourselves that we're a congregation that exists and is vital no matter what the circumstances to come out on the other side healthy. That's a good question. I try not to dwell on it because it falls into that category of things you can't control or even really influence yet. Which, all of us have that experience of people telling us, don't worry about that. And all of us have that experience of failing to not worry about that. So I saw there was a question from Bethany in there.
There is. I was about to get to that next. So Bethany asks, how has your spirituality changed while you've been at CVUUS, Barnaby?
So Bethany, thank you very much for that question. It feels kind of self-indulgent for me to be thinking about it, but I realize it's absolutely vital. I can't be a good minister unless I'm centered on what's really going on with me. So very grateful for that question. I think one thing jumps out. My becoming minister here coincided to my being able to live in Vermont finally, something I thought about off and on for years. A lot of you don't know it, but when Michelle and I were first living together in New York, we subscribed to the Rutland Herald for a while, thinking about when and how we might someday get to Vermont. And so being out here where it's much easier to be in connection with nature has allowed that aspect of my spirituality to become a day in, day out thing instead of something you could only really do on the weekends when I lived in more urbanized areas. And, you know, as I'm talking to you here from my office, this window looks right out towards where the sun sets at this time of year, although I don't actually have a view over a little hill, but it gets beautiful sunsets. And then looking another direction, we see it rise over Musalamu at this time of year and further north other times of the year. And having the dogs to walk, first Lyra and now Pan every day, really gets me out for over an hour a day in natural world. So that's a big aspect of my spirituality that's been able to grow here. I think the other thing is when I was in seminary, I was forced to kind of create a philosophical, scientific understanding of what my theology was, this emergent God theology, this God that has come out of us that wasn't there before us and responsible for creation as we know it, and centering on the God of love that was intuited in the Bible and refined in ways by the early 19th century Unitarian transcendentalists, to develop my own understanding of that. And to be a minister here in Vermont with this congregation and to see the accumulation every day of examples of how we show love to each other, and to understand that that's what's bending the arc, is this cumulative activity of all of these little things. And that has made my spirituality feel less intellectual and more grounded in what the world really is. And the littlest things can impact you. I remember fairly early on in my ministry when my mother was in getting extra care that required her to be at Eastview. I went over there and visited once, and I saw Colleen coming out, and it turned out that she was visiting Jordan's father, who was there. And it just happened to be Colleen and Jordan's father, but it really drove home to me in a real way all of these pastoral connections that the congregation has with each other that I didn't know about. And even though I've been here a lot longer, there's still so many I don't know about. And that really moved beyond what I could put into words, my understanding of our interconnections and how love is at the root of so much of what we do. So I think that there's a kind of a big broadening of the part of my spirituality that I can take on faith confidently now. It's not necessarily the direction of the faith has changed in any huge way, because I was raised as a UU and grew up with the UU values.
And from Bobby, we have a question. Are there particular times that you appreciate and call on your experience reporting on science?
Well, I think all the time. I wouldn't have the theology I have, and I wouldn't actually be doing the job that I have with you if I didn't feel I was among people who valued science. It's an old tradition in religion, but not necessarily always the dominant one, that understanding the world the way it's presented to us is the most direct way to understand God. St. Thomas Aquinas over 1,000 years ago is said to have said that if you get your view of nature wrong, you'll get your view of God wrong. And I think that having been trained in what some of the difficult science questions are, and how good science always involves trying to be the first person to shoot down your own work and to view finding an error in your work not as a setback, but as a revelation that carries you forward, which is what happens with good science. I think is absolutely applicable to ministry. You know, you have to continually be open to revising what you understand of the grief that someone's experiencing, or of what the organizing opportunity is, if you're doing social justice work. And I think that science can be misused like anything, but good science equates with humility about what we know. I've shared with you the metaphor that some of you have picked up elsewhere as well, but if you view science as the island of what we know, and good science is continually expanding that shoreline, at the same time you're expanding that shoreline and building up the island, you're increasing the amount of connection with mystery and what you don't know in the surrounding sea. And so I think that a clear-eyed view of science, what it can do and what it can't do, is actually essential to a vital religion. I hope that answers the question. Also, and the other thing is, reporting made me totally unembarrassed about phoning people up anywhere and asking a question about something I don't know. And more so than most people, I'm not at all embarrassed about showing that I don't know something. And I think that that's allowed me to make connections with a lot of people whose stories I've been able to bring into our services over the years, I think to the benefit of the congregation.
Our last question for today comes from Francois, which is a question in 3 parts. Do Unitarians embrace angels? Do you have a guardian angel? And have you ever communicated with any extrasensory presences?
I thought Francois was going to ask, when can I bring over some more of Michelle's cooking? Which would be a much easier question to answer. But Francois, thank you for that. That's a multi-part question. So I've often preached that we should embrace our imagination and our and contradictions when they show us ways to think about the world differently. And so if you ask me, do I believe in angels specifically, and describe angels as something like angels are depicted in the Bible, I would say no, because just as I view the Bible as being sort of wrong about the nature of God, but right about the nature of people seeking God, I think the Bible is wrong about the nature of angels, but right about the nature of people seeking what you might think of as angelic. And so I have had times when I've allowed myself to, in my imagination, have these dialogues and connections. And someone looking at that might say, well, that's real, not real. You don't believe in it. You don't think of it as real in a scientific sense. But it does change what I'm thinking about in that moment and redirects my thinking in certain ways. So it has an impact on my life that I can't really explain. But, you know, I think someone wrote the collision of myths has a real impact. And so I don't think we should ever dismiss something that we don't profess to believe in if we are thinking about it, because it has an impact on our life. I don't believe I have a guardian angel instead of in the sense of a specific something or somebody watching over me. I believe that the interconnected web of existence contains all kinds of things that you have no control over that lead to random misery and pain, as well as community generated intentional pain. And so I don't think that there's a guardian angel watching over me necessarily. And have I ever communicated with any extrasensory presence? Well, I'm not quite sure what you mean by extrasensory. because I think if I was communicating in the sense of actually consciously trying to make a connection, I would view it as a presence. And have I talked to people who I can't touch and smell and feel? Sure, all the time. Dead ancestors, things like that. But as I've said to a lot of people in memorial services, when I hear them talking back to me, I have to be careful to make sure that they aren't smarter or more brilliant in this kind of conversation than they were in real life, that I'm not just making them a projection of my mind, that I actually am honoring who they were in that communication. So that last question, Francois, I have to talk to you more next time we visit about what you mean by extrasensory presence, because I'm not really sure what you're looking for there. To me, the fact that it's extrasensory doesn't make it more valid. Presence is what's important. That's connection. So I think this is a good time to thank everybody for your questions. I let you know I welcome them in other venues at any time. We could meet outside the church and have a chat, or we could talk online or wherever. I always love to hear from you, both because it's a way of serving you, but also it makes me a better minister. So give me a break and give me a question. And with that, I'll ask Jason to, we're going to have as our postlude, one of my favorite hymns. And fortunately, Kate is on the same wavelength. I don't know if Kate and Ravel are singing this. If not, thank you belatedly, Ravel, for singing that other hymn with Kate, What Wondrous Love.